Like all of us, I enjoy a Sherlock Holmes pastiche. What I generally can't take is the pastiches that change the names of Holmes and Watson. Such is the case for today's pastiche, and I've taken the liberty to change it back to Holmes and Watson in a rather humorous little tale called The Adventure of the Table Foot. It was written by Zero, a pseudonym for Allan Ramsay, published in the Bohemian in January 1894. The Adventure of the Table Foot. I called one morning, a crisp, cold, wintry December day, on my friend Sherlock Holmes for the purpose of keeping him company at breakfast. And as usual, at this time in the morning, I found him running over the agony columns of the different newspapers, quietly smiling at the egotistical private detective advertisements. He looked up and greeted me as I entered. "Ah, Watson, how do you do? You have not had breakfast yet, and you must be hungry. I suppose that is why you drove, and in a hansom too. Yet you had time to stay and look at your barometer. You look surprised. I can easily see, any fool would see it, that you've not breakfasted, as your teeth and mouth are absolutely clean, not a crumb about. I noticed it as you smiled on your entry. You drove. It's a muddy morning, and your boots are quite clean. In a hansom? Don't you know what time you rise? How then could you get here so quickly without doing it in a hansom? A bus or a four-wheeler couldn't do it in time. Oh, the barometer business? Why, it's as plain as pikestaff. It's a glorious morning, yet you brought an umbrella thinking it would rain. And why would you think it would rain unless the barometer told you so? I see some labourer pushed up against you as you came along, the mud on your shoulder, you know." "It was a lamp-post that did it," I answered. "It was a labourer," quietly said Holmes. At that moment, a young man was showing in. He was as pale as death and trembling in every limb. Sherlock Holmes settled him for business, and as was the usual habit with him, when he was about to think, he put his two long tapered hands to his nose. "What can I do for you, sir?" asked Holmes. "Surely a young swell like you, with plenty of money, a brougham, living in fashionable part of the West End, and a son of a peer can't be in trouble." "Good God, you're right. How do you know it all?" cried the youth. "I deduct it," said Sherlock. "You tell it to me all by yourself. But proceed." "My name is St. Timon, Robert St. Timon," put in Holmes. "Yes, that is so, but I saw it on your hat," said Holmes. "I am Robert St. Timon, son of Lord St. Timon of Grosvenor Square, and am private secretary to him," continued Sherlock. "I see a letter marked private and confidential, addressed to your father, sticking out of your pocket." "Quite correct," went on St. Timon. "Thus, it was my confidential capacity I heard one day from my father of an attachment, an infatuation that someone had for him, an elderly lady," said Sherlock Holmes from the depth of his chair, showing how keenly he was following the depth of the plot as it unfolded to him by his peculiar habit of holding his bloodless hands to his nose. "Right again," said the young man. "Mr. Holmes, you're simply marvellous. How do you manage it?" "It is very simple," Holmes replied, "but I will not stop to explain. Watson here understands my little methods quite well by now, and he will tell you by and by." "It was an elderly and immensely wealthy lady then," Robert St. Timon continued, "named the Honourable Mrs. Coran." "A widow?" Holmes interrupted. "Wonderful," said St. Timon. "The the Honourable Mrs. Coran, a widow. It was she who was simply head over heels in love with my father, Lord St. Timon. He, although a widower, cared little for her, but a lot for her money, said the quick-witted detective. How do you divine these things? You guess my innermost thoughts, the words before they're out of my mouth. How do you do it? St. Timon asked. I know the human race, Sherlock Holmes answered. Well, if he could manage, he wanted to inherit her money without marrying her. Would she leave him her riches if he did not propose, was the question. How to find out? He was a comparatively young man. He did not unnecessarily wish himself tied down to an octogenarian, although a millionairess. But he mustn't lose her will. If, when she died, and he was not her husband, would he get the money? If the worst came to the worst, he must marry her sooner rather than letting the gold slip out of his grasp. But he must not espouse the old lady needlessly. How was he to find out? A project struck him, and the means offered itself. We were both asked to a dinner party at the Countess Plain de Beers, where we knew the Honourable Mrs. Coran would be present, and you both accepted, interrupted Holmes. Oh, he went on before the other could ask the reasons for his swift and accurate deductions. Oh, it's very simple. I saw it in the Daily Telegraph's London Day by Day. Yes, we accepted, continued St. Timon, and this was our plan of campaign. I was to take the old doting lady down to dinner and to insinuate myself into her confidence, aided by some good wine, of which she was a devoted admirer, in a subtle fashion, and thus extract the secret out of her. I was to find out, by the time she arrived at the Countess's old port, whether my father was her heir or not, whether she had left him her money without being his wife. Time was short, and if she had not, my father was to propose to her the very night after dinner. The signal agreed on between my father and me was that if he was her heir without being her husband, I was to kick him under the table and he would not propose. Otherwise he would. Oh, Mr. Holmes, he sobbed, turning his piteous white face to Sherlock. This is where I want your great intellect to help me and aid me to explain this mystery. The plan worked admirably, he went on. I gleaned every fact about the disposition of her money after her death from her, when she was in her cups, or rather her wine glasses. My father was her absolute and sole heir, and I thanked the heavens with all my heart that I was spared such a stepmother. I kicked, as arranged, my father under the table, but oh, Mr. Holmes, immediately after dinner, my father went and asked her to be his wife, and she has accepted him. What does it all mean? What does it all mean? That you kicked the foot of the table instead, quietly replied the greatest detective of modern times, as he unravelled the intricate plot and added another success to his brilliant career. The end. I hope you enjoyed that, and if you did, please like, subscribe for future pastiches, and until next time, bye bye.